My name is Nisha, and today I'm going to be talking about bringing more mindfulness to our relationships. I remember one beautiful spring morning, I woke up and went out first thing to sit on my deck, which is one of my favorite places. And the sun was shining. You had that smell in the air of things blooming, that smell that only comes in the spring. And I was reading an inspiring book. I read a few chapters. I did a short meditation. I offered a little prayer, and I just felt centered and full of gratitude and joy and love and goodness. And I was looking forward to having just an amazing and productive day. Then I opened up my laptop to begin working. And first thing, I received a difficult email from someone. And instantly, my peace was hijacked. And I was flooded with negative emotion. And I remember just feeling so incredibly frustrated that I had been intentional about centering myself and setting up a good day. And I was just baffled and frustrated at how so quickly it had been ruined by another human being. Relationships are often the source of our greatest joy and our greatest pain. It is in relationship to others that the greatest learning about ourselves takes place. It is often where our fears and our insecurities, our traumas, our judgments, our rigid belief systems, and our unconscious narratives are manifest. We are going to be affected by people, and we are going to affect others. Sometimes we can use apathy as a protector and kind of shut ourselves off, pretending like we just don't care. No one can bother me. But closing our hearts and being unaffected also shuts us off from connection, and that's never the answer. We have to accept and allow that feelings are created in us, both good and bad, by the words and actions of others, and that is okay. We can't necessarily control our immediate responses to other people, but mindfulness in our relationships is learning to consciously choose our response to those feelings by focusing on what we can control, which is our own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and allowing our interactions with others to really teach us about ourselves. It is our ego or our false self's tendency to want to blame other people for our negative reactions and difficult feelings. If I can horribilize the other, I can avoid taking accountability for my responses and justify my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors toward them because, they deserve it. We give our power away and feel like a victim to other people's unconscious behaviors. It takes practice and intention to feel our feelings and to look inward and see where they're coming from instead of just our natural instinct, which is to look outside of ourselves for someone or something else to blame. Learning to self-regulate and hold on to our sense of self when we are in relationship with other people is difficult. And oftentimes, the more we care about the other person or the more important the relationship is to us, the harder it is to hold on to our sense of self. Self-regulating is one of the most important things we can do to have close and healthy relationships. The opportunities for awareness relationships present are endless. And today I'm just going to touch on a few that have been powerful in my own life. The first is developing awareness around the importance of boundaries. What's mine and what is theirs. For a long time, I felt responsible for other people's reactions to me. If they didn't like me, if they felt threatened by me, if they criticized me or had any negative response to me at all, I felt like it was my responsibility to change or to work harder, or to prove to them that, I'm a good person and that I'm likable. And my sense of self was reflected back to me by how I was perceived by others. An important boundary I had to set for myself is that other people's opinions are none of my business. I try to always be open to feedback when it is given with the intent to help me or because someone cares about me. But I try to set a boundary on feedback that is given in an effort to tear down, judge, or simply be critical. I have found that sometimes it is necessary for me to pull back from a relationship or limit my exposure to an individual, even if just for a time, or sometimes to cut it off completely when another person will not honor the boundaries I have created for my well-being. And this is a very rare occurrence, and it's always really hard. Setting boundaries and taking accountability for my own centeredness has improved my relationships. It's made them more authentic and connecting and helped my heart to be more open. I'm no longer trying to control other people's responses and reactions to me to regulate my own sense of self. For many years, there was an individual in my life whose approval I was always seeking. I tried to say the right things around them. I could sense that they wanted me to be a certain way that really wasn't congruent with who I am because they considered it the right way, and I wanted them to think well of me. And it was hard for me to handle the invalidation I felt from them when I was more genuinely me. I could sense that my authentic opinions and feelings made them feel uncomfortable, and that really dysregulated me. We had a really strained relationship, and I think both of us felt pretty critical of the other. It wasn't until I set a boundary in my own thinking and stopped seeking their approval that our relationship actually improved. I showed up as me and started letting them know who I really am. And it was challenging for them and often uncomfortable for us both. But ultimately, it has led to more closeness, and I'm more at peace in their presence. I began to recognize that the reaction to me had a lot more to do with their own insecurities and belief systems than it did me and who I was. Relationships are also powerful indicators of things we have created an identity around, or maybe an area we have unhealed traumas. There was an area of my life that I put a lot of pressure on myself to excel. I had to prove my value, my worth, and make it pleasing to everyone. And when I received criticism from others, it felt like I might die because my identity and value was too tied up in its success. And because it was also a part of my career, it felt like I had to excel and please others to survive. Starting to be aware of my emotional reactions to other people expressing displeasure to this part of my life was really powerful. I started to self-define around who I wanted to be in this part of my life, and that was really powerful. What values were most important to me, while also, allowing myself to be human and accepting that disappointing people was just an inherent part of putting myself out there. This helped me to accept other people's feedback and even be grateful for it. I could allow them to have their own reactions to me and to my work. As I practiced making sure that my work was not my identity, it also felt less personal. Places where sensitivities show up in our relationship can also provide important information about areas in our lives where maybe we have some unhealed trauma. There was a part of me where someone's words of criticism, especially if the person was close to me, could put me in a fetal position on the floor in complete tears and hysterics. I had a lot of shame around my reaction until I acknowledged that I had some pretty significant trauma that had created a belief that my worthiness of love was dependent on perfection in this part of myself. If I felt like this part of me was being rejected, especially by people close to me, I had a huge overreaction. Once I recognized where my strong emotional reaction was coming from, I could take responsibility for my own healing. Healing the trauma and working through the false narratives and belief systems that were created by it has helped me to not be so emotionally charged and reactive by the words of others. When we are dependent on other imperfect humans for our sense of self, relationships can often leave us feeling like, what about me? They can expose our insecurities and show us ways that our ego is still manifesting in our lives. Years ago, I had two very, very dear friends who did not know each other. And both of these relationships were really important to me. One day, I decided to get the three of us together and introduce them, and we all went to lunch. And these two friends of mine hit it off. And within the week, they were having their own independent text exchanges and interactions. And then they were both telling me like how amazing they thought the other friend was, and thanked me for introducing them. And all of a sudden, like a little feeling rose up in my chest, like a tight constriction. And I started asking that question, well, what about me? Remember me? I was close friends with both of you first. Are you both now going to forget me? And it took me a couple of days to kind of calm myself down and offer my fear that I was going to be abandoned by these two dear friends' compassion, and then honestly kind of laugh at myself a little. My friends' relationship with each other did not take anything away from my relationship with them. If anything, it's enhanced it, as we are all so different from each other and we offer such beautiful and unique things. Taking ownership over our jealousies and pettiness and bringing mindfulness to what fears are being triggered brings powerful self-knowledge. One of the most powerful ways relationships bring greater awareness are trigger people. These are people who really, they aren't really doing anything negative toward us. They just trigger a negative emotional response. There's just something about them that bugs you. In Debbie Ford's book, Dark Side of the Life Chaser, she addresses our shadow self and offers the suggestion that what triggers us about others are traits we refuse to own in ourselves. Or as Eckhart Tolle says, anything that you resent and strongly react to in another person, it's also in you. I had a few people in my life that triggered me because I felt like they were always seeking for my validation, like a pat on the back or fishing for compliments, and in general, wanting my reassurance that they were good. And it bothered me, and I felt myself kind of resisting closeness with them. And it wasn't until I recognized and owned that I too had a desire for others to tell me that I was good enough and that I was okay, that I wanted people to recognize and validate my efforts. And when I could offer that part of myself grace and compassion, then I could also do it for others. The trait in others stopped triggering me as soon as I could own that it was a part of me too. I had a friend who was always really bugged by a sister-in-law because her sister-in-law was so needy. And she was always, like in my friend's perception, acting helpless and reaching out for people to come and help her. And, you know, when she was sick, she would ask their mother-in-law to come and help watch her kids. And when she felt overwhelmed, she would ask everyone to come help her with projects. And it just drove my friend nuts. Her lack of independence just frustrated the heck out of her. Until one day she realized that she too at times needed help, but always refused to ask for it. She was triggered by her sister-in-law because her sister-in-law had no shame in asking for what she needed. But my friend would not allow herself to need assistance because she saw it as weakness. When she could start allowing herself to need others too, she stopped being so triggered by her sister-in-law. You know, it can feel easy to stay centered when we are in isolation, like I was that beautiful morning on my deck. It is easier to feel like we have reached enlightenment, and closing ourselves off to connection can feel more safe. However, there is a pretty high cost to that. You know, we will miss the glorious joy of deep connection and all of the opportunities for growth that relationships and interacting with other people provide. I've had my moments too where I just want to crawl in a cave and not come out. But now, when I feel my peace hijacked by others, I practice bringing awareness to my inner world. After allowing my emotional response, I take a deep breath and ask myself, what does my reaction to this person have to teach me about myself? I have developed more true self-knowledge from the difficult relationships in my life, from my trigger people, than I have from reading the best books. This incredible learning, however, only happened when I stopped blaming others and labeling people as difficult or terrible, and brought awareness to what was happening inside of me. There really is like a sacredness to the work that happens inside of us as we journey in relationship to others through life. We stop thinking of people as the other and start saying, me too. It is the only way to experience the essence of Namaste, which means the divine within me honors and sees the divine within you.
Don't forget to download your free mini course. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to stay up to date on our latest courses, retreats, and upcoming events. We are here to help you heal and thrive, mind, body, and spirit.